Negro Fort was originally constructed by the British during the War of 1812. British forces, seeking alliances with native peoples and the rebellious enslaved Africans, built the fort as a military outpost to challenge U.S. expansion. But when the British withdrew after the war, they left behind a well-armed fort and promised the black and native allies that they could keep it. For over a year, the fort became a thriving refuge for those who had escaped the iron jaws of slavery. Some were Maroons, Africans who had escaped bondage and survived for generations in the swamps and wilderness of Florida. Others were recent fugitives from Georgia, the Carolinas, and beyond. Together, with support from the Seminole and Creek people, they turned the fort into a symbol of defiance. They cultivated land, trained militarily, and prepared for what many knew was inevitable: American retaliation. To the United States government and Southern slaveholders, Negro Fort was an existential threat. Its very existence inspired enslaved people to flee. It was a constant reminder that armed black people could not only survive, but thrive outside of white control. General Andrew Jackson, already infamous for his genocidal campaigns against Native Americans, ordered the destruction of the fort. Under the guise of suppressing lawlessness and protecting Georgia planters, Jackson sent U.S. troops and allied Creek warriors to destroy the fort. On July of 1816, U.S. naval forces under Lieutenant Colonel Duncan Clinch moved in. For days, the fort's defenders held strong, despite being outgunned and outnumbered. But on July 27, 1816, tragedy struck. A single well-aimed cannonball, fired from a gun post on the river, hit the fort's powder magazine. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic. Reports say the blast was heard hundreds of miles away. Over 270 men, women, and children were killed instantly. Survivors were captured, re-enslaved, or executed. The destruction of Negro Fort was not just a military action. It was a message. It signaled that any place of refuge for black people outside of white control would be hunted and destroyed. It was an early example of the U.S. government's willingness to use extreme violence to uphold slavery. But though the fort was destroyed, its spirit lived on. The Seminole Wars, sparked in part by this very event, would rage for decades. Black warriors would fight alongside Native allies in the swamps of Florida, refusing to return to chains. They became known as the Black Seminoles, and their legacy of armed resistance echoed from the Everglades to the abolition struggle of the Civil War.